let's be honest, things aren't great either, are they, between Harry and Meghan at the moment? I mean, did you see this little dig?
You must, honestly, your kids and Meghan must be so proud of you. No, do they tell you every day?
They tell me every day that they're proud of me.
No, of course they don't. It's a loveless, effed up marriage. And in that moment, I think Harry sort of revealed it. He did manage to deliver an entire speech and give a whole interview with Woke ITV without one reference to the disastrous court case defeat this week. Watch.
To bring the Games back to the UK 13 years after London 2014 obviously feels incredibly special, all of us. Not just because this is where the Invictus journey first began, but because Britain has always understood the importance of service, resilience, and standing together when it matters most. Today we've had a glimpse of what's waiting for us next summer. We've seen determination, we've seen laughter, some sweat, and we've seen people trying something new, cheering each other on, and proving once again that sport has an incredible way of bringing people together. We even had an MP running around doing the laser run, and Alison Hammond, who I think beat him. But this is just the warm-up.
I mean, to say the reaction was muted would be an understatement.
What has struck me walking around the arena today is just how many faces I recognise from those different groups that were part of the original journey back in 2014. Some of us have lost more of our hair.
Oh my God.
Some of us look younger than we did before. Some of us look older.
That is astonishing, isn't it? Because that's the moment where it's like Harry of the past would have had a laugh about that, like he's poking fun at himself and the fact that he's lost his hair, but there was radio silence in the arena. Keep watching.
The world has a lot of troubles. When it comes to national resilience, let's use this moment, the next 365 days, to lean on and learn from the Invictus community to be able to help every single person out there.
I mean, Richard Fitzwilliam, royal commentator who joins me now. So great to have you on Outspoken first time, Richard, obviously. An old colleague of mine, not old yourself, but as in we go back a long, long way, Richard. Seriously, where does this guy get off? Like, no, the world doesn't need advice from you, mate. Right now, all he should have been doing is getting up on stage and showing some sense of contrition. And I don't know about you, but I saw absolutely none of that in that appearance. Mainstream media lying to you again? Get the real story here. Dan Wootton Outspoken, no spin, no bias, no censorship. Subscribe for free and let's go.
I have never seen much contrition from the Sussexes. I don't think they fully understand or appreciate what the word means. Look at Meghan, for example. I mean, she's the most trolled person in the world, we hear. And, of course, the lies they spread about the royal family, for example, famously on Oprah, then, of course, in the Netflix series, and, of course, Harry's memoir Spare was a bizarre feat. But they're not into contrition. What they tend to believe, we've just heard it. I mean, obviously, we know Invictus is a remarkable organization. We know it does a great deal for wounded veterans, and there's little doubt about that. I mean, 10 years was celebrated in the service at St. Paul's. But the problem is the foundations, as I see it, the foundations on which they built their brand are crumbling away.
And it does feel, Richard, in that climate, pretty despicable to use the children. So Harry, Meghan's Spare, for example, posting, when all else fails, pull out the kids. Although they won't be seen by anyone, of course, but the noise is what matters. The noise will camouflage Harry's recent disaster. And I actually think that's true, Richard, because if you look at the mainstream media coverage this morning, so here's The Sun, Meghan a move. It's that whole idea, isn't it? If you're desperately trying to change the subject, Richard, about something that you don't want people to talk about, give them something else. And it feels like Harry and Meghan are sort of serving up the children, because what I don't understand, Richard, is that if they genuinely believed that the United Kingdom was so unsafe, so unsafe for them just a few years ago that they would be putting their lives at risk to come into the country, then I'm sorry, Richard, what's changed? Well, I'll tell you what's changed. A thumping courtroom defeat where they desperately need people to stop talking about one story and move on to the will they, won't they meet the king. And I'm sorry, I do believe they're using the children, and I don't think they should be using their own children. Do you?
Well, I certainly don't think they should be, but I think this has been coming for some time, and I see the Sussexes' plan in three parts. I mean, firstly, as you know, I mean, we don't see the faces of the children often. They're, as it were, somewhat hidden, which is in itself rather odd, but of course that's up to them. But the first part in this was, I thought, an impertinence. For example, to go to Australia on this faux royal tour, which Meghan, of course, was using for commercial purposes. I mean, we know that. But what we also see, because the Prince and Princess of Wales were last in Australia in 2014. It's probably their turn to go. And it was, I think, completely wrong since Australia is a realm. But that was the first stage. What they were aiming for was this without the publicity that they got. Harry knew perfectly well he wouldn't get security, but nonetheless, they used it as a form of emotional blackmail, as I see it. Because first we had this unbelievably humorous saga about whether or not he was to stay in a royal accommodation. That turned out to be Buckingham Palace. And it turned out also the palace didn't want, given that the court case would probably, and Harry expected a victory possibly, and I'm sure he did, and so he could have given a speech from the steps of the court, or if he'd wished, and then, of course, the optics of him going back to Buckingham Palace with the king being head of the judiciary would not have been good. But also we had not only security and not only accommodation, but also Meghan, I mean, Harry and Meghan actually had their team release the schedule. The schedule's been torn up, but you're right about what happens next, because we're not about to see Meghan and the children. But what is probable, I suspect, since the king, as you say, wants to see his grandchildren, that there will be a meeting of some sort. But that we must qualify that. It's absolutely essential, and I think that the royal family have solved this. William wouldn't have anything to do with it, I'm certain. But I think it's absolutely essential. Firstly, no photographs, no recording, anything that, I mean, when he saw King Charles, after he had heard he had cancer, he was on Good Morning America the next time. Well, literally a short while afterwards, when he recently, last September, saw King Charles for 50 minutes, I think it was, and he was in Ukraine, with fair enough, linked to Invictus. What does he do? He gives an interview to The Guardian. So anything about linked to the media must clearly not happen. I do think the king wants to see his grandchildren. I think he probably will. If I had to bet, and I should think also with the pilgrimage to Diana's grave, that I can understand, that will be, as it were, also, I suspect, on the agenda. But this whole thing has been a complete farce, really, because you've had publicity which they couldn't have expected, and a judgment which he certainly couldn't, and will have to pay, or partly pay for. Of course, there were 7 claimants.
Now, I just want to talk about the choreography, Richard, in terms of how a meeting with King Charles could work this weekend. I am told there's no way that Queen Camilla wants to be part of this, and that there's no way that Prince William will be part of this. But what's interesting is that Chris Shipp, and you know, Richard, you would never be this unkind, but I call Chris Shipp's organisation woke ITV, because these days they literally just seem to be the mouthpiece for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. But what makes it quite interesting, Richard, is you know that this information is coming directly from Harry and Meghan, so it shows you what they're thinking, which is why it's quite important to discuss. Chris Shipp posted last night that the Duchess of Sussex will not be attending any public-facing engagements. Kate Mancy, the assistant editor of The Times, added, "Let's see," with the suggestion, of course, that there is going to be some type of public-facing encounter, potentially with the king, although you know they all say, actually, all of that will remain behind closed doors. But this is the reporting on the woke ITV website that I want to get into with you, because it's quite interesting stuff, Richard, and it is new developments. So Shipp reports that ITV News understands last-minute discussions have been taking place in the last few days over a meeting between Prince Harry and his father, King Charles. They're trying to find a mutually convenient time and location for the father and son to see each other, but staff in both camps are suspicious of the other's motives. The latest arrangements centre on Harry travelling 90 minutes from Birmingham to meet the king at his Highgrove estate in Gloucestershire. Harry is trying to work out a way for his family to travel there too, as he is keen for his 2 children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, to see their grandfather. The last time King Charles saw his 2 California-based grandchildren was in the summer of 2022, meaning they have never met him as king. However, there is some briefing taking place on both sides about the willingness of the other side to meet, or to find a time which works for the king and Harry. If any such reunion were to take place, it would happen away from the cameras, and Meghan does not wish the children to be photographed, as the couple have sought to protect the identities of Archie and Lilibet. I have to pause at that point, Richard, and just say, what planet are we on, Chris Shipp? Like, all the time she's posting the identities of those children. So, sorry, I just had to say that, because it's just a complete and utter fact check. Like, it's just not true. But he goes on. ITV News also understands, and this is really significant, Richard, that Prince Harry is planning to stay with his uncle, Lord Spencer, on his Althorpe estate near Northampton. It is where Harry's mother, Princess Diana, is buried on an island in the middle of a lake. Harry and Meghan plan to take Archie and Lilibet to see their paternal grandmother's grave. The Spencer family reunion on Friday and Saturday will include all of Diana's siblings, Charles Spencer, Lady Jane Fellows, and Lady Sarah McCorkindale. If King Charles is at his Highgrove estate this weekend, it is unlikely Queen Camilla will also be there. Surprise, surprise! After the negative comments Harry made about her in his book Spare, the Queen does have a family home in Wiltshire where she does often stay at the weekend. So what is quite clear, Richard, is that, she's going to pop off, isn't she, to Wiltshire and say, I'm having nothing to do with this. But very interesting, because what Chris Shipp doesn't mention is the motivation behind the Althorpe visit, which I think is to film for this documentary, which they've got planned for Princess Diana's 30th death anniversary next year. But also, Richard, what I found so interesting is the fact that the front of Prince Harry's team to brief to Chris Shipp that they still distrust Buckingham Palace. It's like, they really can never just shut up, can they? Like, if they want this meeting to happen, stop attacking the king.
It would be wise, but then we saw over the accommodation that both teams were like years apart, and there can't be any love lost either. And in Spare, of course, Harry said, well, it was a sort of hate fest against several courtiers who, of course, wouldn't appreciate it. The one exception is interesting. Potentially, Jamie Lowther Pinkerton, who was the private secretary, who was very close to both princes, but years ago, for 8 years, and he's always been there's always been the possibility that he might perhaps play a mediator between Harry and William, but I simply can't see that. With reference to Queen Camilla, the dangerous one, to quote Harry, the way he rubbished her in some of the interviews around Spare will not have been forgotten. But I do think that the king, keen though he is to see his grandchildren, will be fully aware, will be very, very wary. We've only just seen it with the accommodation and with the security, and then, of course, the court case. And of course, Charlotte Griffith's articles and revealing the fact that Harry told absolute lies.
Yes, and she was here earlier this week, and I do encourage everyone to go and watch that full interview, because obviously she does explain. And Richard, I believe, and I know she took a lot of flack, and I questioned her, but I do believe that what she said in court was completely legitimate. And the judge agrees.
The judge did agree. In fact, the complainants got absolutely nowhere. But I think with reference to this meeting, the Sussexes have a vested interest as well, certainly commercially. They're not, he's not very bright, she's not very talented, so what have they got? They got the royal links. Now, this is the ultimate, meeting with the king and also introducing the king, of course, to a future generation. You can understand that. It's Archie and Lily, it's not their fault. Whether when William ascends the throne, their titles will remain is quite another matter, but then that's for the future. On this occasion, the courtiers, absolutely clear that they don't trust the motivations of the Sussexes. But once having leaked the fact, it's bound to leak, as you know, from US Weekly to a whole variety of sources, the Sussexes ensure various thoughts get out. The one that deeply touched me, and I'm sure that deeply touched you, was the idea that after they'd met the king, they'd have, for example, a half-in, half-out situation outside Britain. How about that, for example?
Richard Fitzwilliams, absolutely fascinating analysis as ever. So delighted to have you on Outspoken. Please do come back soon, Richard. Thank you.
I'd be delighted.
Much. Thank you, Richard. And of course, it is a Friday, so we are going to reveal the worst Britain in the world this week. Your nominees from Monday, this is your Union Jackass winners going head-to-head, Sadiq Khan. Tuesday, the aforementioned Prince Harry, he'd be my vote. Wednesday, Andy Burnham. Thursday, Nick Lowles. To your comments, Robert Jake 8683. Harry was so obsessed with having to go at the media when he got with her, but as soon as they moved to USA, that's all they do is talk to the media, making the royal family look bad. He should be ashamed of himself. He ought to have his title removed. He brought nothing but shame on the family. Solicitor Randolph, Harry is so alarmingly bald. And obviously that's funny because that's what he said about Prince William. So I see what you did there and I love it. Zero Unknown 117. Andy Burnham for blocking grooming gangs investigation of Manchester. Dale Blake 1972. Burnham, he looks set to be worse than Starmer. Katrina Tucker, all of them. But first place goes to that Nick Lowles for being a first class tosser. Can do M4. Sadiq Khan's inner demon starts reflecting through his looks. Matthew C. It's always Sadiq Khan unless Keir Starmer is one of those other options. And he's not this week. So let me get to your results. And of course, we've had lots of them coming through. Last time I checked, it was well over 50,000, but I'm just going to get right ready to see where we're at. Yeah, nearly 60,000 votes from what I can see. And the results are in 4% of you going for Nick Lowles. He's in fourth place. In third place, Andy Burnham with 17% of the vote. The runner-up, my choice, with 30% of the vote. The alarmingly bored Prince Harry for the worst Britain in the world this week with 49% of your vote, Sadiq Khan. And of course, on what has been a very shocking day, a very special Greatest Britain, because she is one of my greatest Britons of all time. Anne Widdy. Such an amazing friend to me, such a loyal woman to me, one of the only people who spoke out publicly when things were at my absolute lowest. And I will never forget that. Widdy, I said earlier, before everything emerged, that the fight for this country is going to be so much harder without you alongside us, but we will do it for you.
This video is for news reporting, commentary, and educational purposes. The views expressed are based on publicly available information and personal analysis. We strive for accuracy but encourage viewers to verify information through official sources.